What is up guys, Dzeeff here, and it has been so long since the last Fluffal deck profile that the last time I profiled this deck, Brilliant Fusion was at 3 copies per deck, which was just insane to think about. So it's been a little while, and Fluffals actually have received indirect and direct support over the past couple of months here. So Master Rule 5 is probably the biggest deal that really does help this deck quite a bit. Master Rule 4 was a huge hindrance to the Fluffal strategy, especially after Brilliant Fusion got hit, but there was also a new card out of Dual Overload and 2 new cards out of Toon Chaos. You might remember a couple months ago I made a video talking about the new Fluffal support that was announced in the OCG, but for now I want to focus on a currently legal TCG deck list. Before that though, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Ridge wallets. You've probably seen them before. A lot of people carry around their outdated bulky leather wallets, but this is a perfect upgrade. You can easily hold up to 12 cards, and there's even a convenient money clip on the back for carrying cash. Ridge wallets even have a lifetime warranty, so you'll never need to buy another wallet. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it that they'll let you try it out for 45 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't absolutely love it. If you're interested in picking up a Ridge wallet, make sure to click the link in the description below, and don't forget to use promo code Dzeeff in all caps for 10% off your order. Anyway, on to the deck profile here, and I will say that playing a dedicated going second OTK based strategy right now is kind of a risky idea because yeah, a lot of decks can set up some pretty crazy boards, but because we're actually trying to win the game on turn 1, it makes it a little bit more difficult because we can't play cards like Dark Ruler No More or Evenly Matched that would prevent us from OTKing our opponent. Anyway, for the deck profile here, we are playing, of course, 3 copies of Fluffal Dog, the standard 3 of in any Fluffal deck. It is one of the best searchers in the deck, really. I mean, it just grabs whatever you need. And then 3 copies of Fluffal Bear, of course. These are like the bread and butter for all of your combos. They just are the main consistency boosters for the strategy in terms of the monster cards that search other things. We also have 2 copies of Fluffal Penguin, of course. It just cycles through our deck, which is really solid, and 2 copies of Fluffal Wings, which is one of the craziest cards in the deck, probably just because it's so much advantage. I mean, it searches a card because it pops the vendor, it draws 2 cards. Fluffal Wings is just one of the biggest reasons to play the Fluffal strategy right now, just in general, I guess. We also have 2 of the new card, Fluffal Angel, and this was out of Toon Chaos. Oh man, is this card good. So basically it's a monster born while in the pendulum scale, and that's pretty solid as well, but it also has a fairly useful on-field effect, lets you tribute it to target a Fight for Fusion monster from your graveyard and discard 1 card to special summon it. That's pretty good, and I really do like this card a lot. It is one of the cards that you wouldn't want to play 3 copies of because that might be a little bricky, but as a one of with 2 useful effects, it's pretty darn useful. We also have 1 copy of Fluffal Owl for searching polymerization when we really need it, and 1 copy of Fluffal Cat. I still feel this card is very important in the early stages of your combos. Sometimes your hand can be a little bit awkward and you really need to recycle that polymerization, and Fluffal Cat can do that for you. We also have 3 copies of Edgem Chain, of course, and 1 copy of Sabers. I really feel like this is the right ratio. I think it has been for a while. The Sabers is kind of okay, but the main reason you need this card is to make specific extra deck monsters like Fight for Tiger, like Fight for Wolf, which are really powerful. But in most cases, you're trying to use the Chain as often as possible because it gets you that sweet graveyard effect. We also have 2 copies of Fight for Meister, the other new card out of Toon Chaos, and this card is really interesting. So you can tribute a level 4 or lower Fight for, Fluffal, or Edgem monster to special summon from your deck 1 Fiend monster from your deck with the same level but with a different name. Basically, this card will turn your dog or penguin or whatever into Edgem Chain whenever you want. That's really good because having the Fluffals engrave is great for cards like Fight for Fusion. Getting to Edgem Chain when otherwise you wouldn't have a great way to get it on the field is really great. Now, because this format is so combo heavy, I feel like we have to play a lot of hand traps. So we are playing 3 copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma with our 1 copy of Psyframe Driver, 3 copies, yes, 3 copies of Nibiru, and 2 copies of Effect Veiler. So finding the space for all these hand traps and the driver was not easy. I mean, really not easy. We had to cut a lot of the more cute spell cards that we had in the deck here because I just want to maximize the chances that I can stop my opponent's combo and then OTK them on the next turn. So when we look at these spell cards here, you might see some cards actually missing that I'll mention, but I really feel right now if you're actually trying to take Fluffals to like a local event and try to actually win some matches, you need to play a lot of hand traps, and these really are, in my opinion, some of the best ones that you can play right now. If your own metagame is a little bit different, or if you want to swap out any of these hand traps for other cards, feel free to do so, but at at the moment, I feel most comfortable playing with 8 different hand traps to stop our opponent's combo. For these spell cards, we are playing 3 copies of Fight for Patchwork, obviously probably the best card in the entire deck to open. If you open this card, your win percentage goes way up. It is just extremely powerful. 3 copies of Toy Vendor, also one of the staple sort of bread and butter cards to any Fluffle deck. It is just insanely powerful, especially because it's not a hard once per turn for any of the effects. Having the ability to search cards and cycle through your deck is really good, and sometimes you can get really lucky off of the draw as well and make your deck even better. We also have 3 copies of Polymerization, of course. I've said in the past, I'm not a huge fan of the Fusion Substitute instead of the 3rd copy of Polymerization. I really just have never liked that card in this deck, and I feel especially right now with all the interruptions going around, it can be difficult to actually put a bunch of monsters on the field, so I'm just not a fan of the Fusion Substitute, but feel free to play it if you really want to. And lastly, 2 copies of Fight for Fusion. I do think it is important to play the 2nd copy. You will not always be able to OTK your opponent, and in those cases you really want to have the 2nd copy of Fight for Fusion as backup. Some cards that I had to cut from the deck here to make room for the hand traps were things like Fight for Factory that I'm a huge fan of, and things like obviously Foolish Burial Goods is a card that a lot of people play. I think that having a little bit less consistent of a deck by losing cards like Foolish Burial Goods is okay, because I think we need more hand traps for going second. Other than that though, you really can't cut too much because so many of the cards in this deck are core for all of the combos, so you really are just kind of stuck with all of these spell cards, and cards like Foolish Burial Goods are not technically necessary for your combos to actually work. Anyway, for the extra deck here, we have of course 3 copies of Fight for Sabretooth, the best card in the entire extra deck. This is a card that actually helped this deck be a little bit more playable in Master Duel 4, but it is still very good in Master Duel 5. It gives you some revival options, it gives you a lot of attack, it just is one of the best cards that you want for this strategy. We also have 2 copies of Fight for Kraken, obviously one of the most important cards for the OTK to work. Basically, you're trying to summon Kraken, send a card, and then use this for Sabretooth, revive the Kraken, and then attack with both of them. The Kraken can attack twice, so if your opponent has no cards by that point, then you can just go for game with these 2 monsters by themselves. We also have 1 copy of Fight for Sheep, 1 copy of Fight for Wolf, and 2 copies of Fight for Tiger. So about these cards, I would just say that Wolf doesn't come up too often, but when it does, it's like one of the only ways that you can win the game in those situations. The Sheep is okay and has been better in the past, but right now, especially because we're not playing 1 copy of Instant Fusion, we don't need to play more than 1 copy. And then the Fight for Tiger, I still feel like you need 2 copies of this card, because sometimes you really just want to break your opponent's board multiple times, and you actually need to do that in some matchups. We also have 1 copy of the new card from Duel Overload, Dangerous Fight for Nightmare, and honestly, I'm not super impressed with this card, but it does come up every once in a while, mostly because your opponent might not realize that it exists, and it can get up to quite a lot of attack points. Where this comes up then is that if your opponent lets your fusion spell card resolve when they have a bunch of negations because they figure you're going to go for like Tiger or Kraken or Sabretooth, sometimes you can just summon this monster and then just maybe attack your opponent for game if it has enough attack. Will that happen too often? Not really, but it is a nice option to have available in your extra deck. We're also playing 1 copy of Fight for Daredevil. I swear I own one of these, but I couldn't find it for this video, so sorry about that. This card isn't great, it doesn't come up too often, but when you do go into time or the match is about to end, you want to have the option to do a little bit of burn damage, which can be really important. We also have 1 copy of Dingirsu, the Orcus of the Evening Star. Obviously a really good rank 8 monster for going second. Yeah, Dingirsu is good enough just because going second, sometimes you want to just send something. You can do some pretty cool stuff like use the Kraken effect, bring it back with Saber, and then make the Dingirsu to send another card. That's pretty cool as well. We also have the 1 copy of Linkrebo, which can sometimes come up to put the wings in the graveyard, and then 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, and lastly 1 copy of Borolo Dragon. Even though this is an OTK based strategy, I do not feel like you need Boral Sword Dragon, because in any situation where you would actually be able to summon the Boral Sword Dragon, I feel like you already would have an OTK set up, because it's pretty hard to put that many monsters on the board in this deck without fusion summoning a bunch of times, in which case you already have enough damage to win the game. That is pretty much all I have to say for today's video though. I hope you enjoyed today's deck profile. I know I haven't done deck profiles in a while, but this one actually did get a lot of direct and indirect buffs over the past couple of months, so I really wanted to talk about it in today's video. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.